If you're interested in what I look like in real life and want to learn more about me, then follow my Instagram page at Joe the Insomniak. Hey everyone. Oh, that's kind of cool. The rain started literally the second I began speaking. I just wanted to say, I felt like it is better just to be more honest and not say anything at all, but I haven't been feeling very great within myself recently, and I'm on metrazethane at the minute, I think that's how you say it, to try and help me better cope with that. It's something that only really affects me. I'm just as productive and I'm still pushing myself really hard, but it's just something that kind of makes it a bit more difficult, but I'm getting on with it, so I'm getting the help I need for it, and I'm going to keep on pressing. So there are going to be changes, pretty big ones coming soon that you'll see. It's just as soon as I get this sorted, they'll come, so I just wanted to say that. I want to say a big thank you to my brother too for sending the stories and helping today. So with that out of the way, let's go on with the video. I have barricaded my front door with every heavy furniture that I own. It is held up for about a week now, but I don't think it will last much longer. I can hear that thing outside. It's constantly making that terrible sound. In any case, it doesn't matter if the door does hold or not. Sure enough, I'll be out of the flood after that. It's just a matter of time. I'm hiding in my bathroom with my laptop now, and I really don't know what to do. I have no idea what's going on. My only hope is that you can help me figure out what to do or what's happening. So let me explain the situation. I've lived in this apartment my whole life, and I've never experienced anything this strange in it before. It's a 4-room apartment located in Stockholm. It's in a very rural area that's expansive. I was brought up here together with my older brother and our uncle. Our parents died when I was too young to remember, and I and my brother were left in the care of my uncle, who owned the apartment. Anyway, in '93, when I was 18 years old, my uncle disappeared during a business trip to South Africa. His body was never found, but presumed dead just a year after his disappearance. It was believed that he was kidnapped together with a group that stayed at the same hotel as him, who were all killed a year later. After he was pronounced dead, I and my brother inherited a fortune that we never even knew about. My brother already moved out, starting his own family, so I was left with the apartment where I'd lived ever since. Because of all the money, I never had to work. I do some jobs as a coder from time to time, but the majority income is from investments my brother helped me make with my inheritance back in the day. I really thought my lonely days as a shy geek without a girlfriend would be over after I got money. Turns out, there's more in it than money. Now, since I didn't really have to work, I rarely met any people, and after a few years, I developed social phobia that never went away. After all those delivery firms that delivered groceries to my front door, I never even stepped outside to buy food. I think it's safe to say that I needed help long before this happened to me. My brother was right about that. Oh my god, my brother, I've truly messed up. This situation is entirely a mess. Anyway, since I so rarely leave my home, I don't really know when it started, but it happened sometime during the end of June or beginning of July. Those days were extremely warm. In fact, it was the warmest July in Stockholm since they started measuring temperature. I was constantly sweating, all my windows were open, the sound from the city outside filled my apartment. I went online and ordered like 6 bottles of Coke to combat the heat, satisfying my unhealthy need for sugar. This was actually what led to me discovering my horrible predicament. The delivery never came. I waited 2 whole days before I called them to ask where my Coke was. To my surprise, they told me that they'd already been at my place and nobody opened the door for them. I didn't believe that, but when the same thing happened with my food delivery, I started to doubt myself more than them. How could I miss the sound of my otherwise so loud doorbell? I waited several days before deciding to leave my home. For the first time in I don't know how long, to buy my own food. This is when my life turned into a nightmare. Now the first thing that I noticed when I opened my front door and stepped out into the stairwell was a mild breeze. Completely different from hot air coming from my windows. The second thing I noticed was a smell. It's hard to describe. It smells like moist wood mixed with an old fireplace. A couple of sunbeams came in through a broken window. On the floor, there's a thick layer of dust. Some mortar had fallen off the walls. I didn't want to think about that. This was certainly not normal for this part of Stockholm, or any parts for that matter, but I had been waiting for several months to get out, so it was perfectly possible that it could have happened while I was hidden away. Perhaps, as I walked over to the elevator, they're in the middle of renovating the building or something. But that doesn't explain why the damages appeared to be so old. The elevator did not work. It annoyed me since I'm not in good shape and I lived out on the 6th floor, so there was quite a lot of stairs to walk down. When I finally got down to the bottom floor, I noticed that the walls were painted in the same colour as when I was a kid. I assumed then that my renovation theory must have been correct, and that they had chosen to go back to the old look. However, and perhaps, I pushed that out of my mind because it didn't fit in with my expectations. There was a big graffiti on one of the walls. I didn't read it or even notice it at this time, but when I come back, it read, "Close the doors." The text was written in a dark red. Creepy. Outside the weather is mild. The extreme heat is now past. That was actually the first thing that made me scared. Instead of just confusion, it just felt so unnatural, like something was wrong at the most fundamental level. The next thing that frightened me was a complete lack of cars on the street in front of me, as well as the absence of the constant hum from the city. I step out to the sidewalk. I couldn't see a single person there. Another thing that was out of place was the vegetation. It was growing everywhere. Now I mean, in every single crack in the sidewalk or in the street, there was something growing. From where I stood, it became clear to me, although I couldn't really believe it. My city's abandoned. I continued down. I go to another usually busy street in Stockholm. Around there, there's the same thing, the complete lack of people. However, there was an abandoned bus in the middle of the street. It was completely broken down. On its side, it's partly obscured. There's a line of text which says, "We open doors." I went inside, trying to find anywhere. I ended up in a grocery store, somehow still expecting to find food there. Of course, it's dark and empty. Every shelf had been looted. The only thing I found was a package of cheese, hard as a rock. I look at the expiration date. It says 8/10/93. Now this literally made my skin crawl. What did it mean? I took the cheese with me and left the store. My heart was rapidly beating in my chest. My head is spinning. I felt dizzy. I had never had a panic attack before, but this seemed to be it. I couldn't breathe, disorientated. I looked around without fixing my eyes on anything. And then I heard it. A noise impossible to describe. It was somehow metallic and organic, and at the same time very, very loud. So loud, in fact, it made me cover my ears. The noise was omnipresent when I focused in on it. It appeared to be coming from the city centre though. It continued for 5 minutes before stopping. The sound terrified me to the bones. I ran home with my fossilized cheese as fast as I could. I was not ready to deal with the source of whatever the noise had been. Also, I needed to go home to think. The first thing I did when I come home was look out of the window. To my relief, everything was normal. I couldn't make sense of it. The merciless heat, the never-ending traffic, the people. This was probably the first time I was ever so happy to see people in my entire existence. It was odd. I went into the kitchen and placed the cheese on the table. For a few minutes, I stare at it. Then, I turned it over and looked at the expiration date, thinking, I read it wrong. But no, 10th of August 93. Had I travelled back in time? My mind was exploring every possibility now. However absurd. I mean, this could have been time travel. How though? It wasn't until now that I realised the true significance of the date. My uncle disappeared that year, just a few days before. Was it a coincidence? I really didn't know what to make of all this. I walked into my room where I basically just stored my uncle's old stuff and some of my own junk. I spent several hours trying to find a clue in this room. But the only thing I found that caught my interest was a business card that belonged to my uncle. Yellow neutral ink. It said, and under that was my uncle's name and phone number. No one had known what company he worked for. At least no one ever told me. I decided to Google the name of the company, but it didn't come up with anything. Not too strange. The company probably went bankrupt long ago. A little disappointed, I suddenly realised something that made my blood freeze. I had been so occupied with trying to figure out what was going on that I hadn't thought about how much trouble I was really in. If my front door led to whatever horrible place I just visited, how do I get out? I couldn't jump out of a window, as that would have killed me. The real world felt so close. I turned to one of the windows and look out. There it is. Civilization, even though I thought I could see it right there. It seemed to be cut off from me. I wondered if I could tie some sheets together, like in an old movie, but I only owned 2 sheets. In the end, I decided to do something that I hadn't in years. Call my brother. When he picked up the phone, I didn't really know what to say. I couldn't exactly tell him the truth if I wanted him to believe it. He would have thought I went truly insane. I had to come up with some excuse for him to get over to my place, and I must have sounded like some kind of idiot when I couldn't immediately tell him why I called. He said, "Is everything okay?" Obviously worried that something happened to me on a psychological level. In the end, I just told him that I come across some information about our uncle that I wanted to show him as quick as possible. At least, that was partly true. He said to come over to his place. He even said his wife would cook dinner. No, I said. I mean, that's nice and all, but you really need to come over here. Like, I really mean it. Just come here, please. He went silent for a few seconds before saying, "Are you sure everything's alright? You really need to come out of there more often." "Yeah, thanks, I know, but you see, I really need you to see this, okay?" I was getting angry. He said, "Calm down, I'll be over in a few hours." "Thanks," I said in relief. "But hey, can you call me when you're outside? There's something wrong with the door. I have to throw the keys out the window." He then said, "What the hell, man? Have you locked yourself in there or what?" I could hear him sighing, "Okay, I'll come when I'm ready, just wait." During the hours I had to wait, I didn't leave the apartment. I only dared to look out of the peephole. I literally didn't see anything except for the decaying stairwell. But after standing there for about 10 minutes, just trying to gather my thoughts, I faintly heard the noise I heard when I was outside. It lasted just as long as the first time I heard it. I got goosebumps from hearing it again, deciding to get away from the front door. I went to the living room to stay there, trying so badly not to panic. Until my brother finally called me. I saw him standing on the sidewalk below waving. I threw the keys down, yelling at him to come back up, quickly. I thought if somebody opened the door from outside, I'd be able to get out. However, after about 5 minutes, I was getting worried. He should have come up by then. And now my phone rings. It's him. "Hey, where the hell are you?" he said. I replied, "Where are you?" "I'm standing outside your apartment." He then said, "What have you done to the place?" I said, "No, you can't be." He said, "It smells like somebody died here. And didn't you renovate the place?" He said, "You really need my help." I said, "Listen to me. This is gonna sound crazy, but no, listen, please. Earlier today, when I tried to leave the apartment, I ended up somewhere else. Somewhere where everything's dead. And I found this package of cheese, you see." "What the hell are you talking about cheese for?" "Yeah, sharp, and listen, the expiry date? 93. He said, "That's funny." I said, "I'm not trying to be funny, listen. You must have entered my apartment in that other place." He said, "Hey, did you find our old Nintendo?" "Ow, old? No, I think you should get out of there now." He said, "Adam, I can hear you. You have a sick sense of humour. I can hear you in the bathroom, Adam." I said, "No, I'm not in the bathroom. Get out of there now." I could hear my brother walk over to the bathroom. A few seconds later, the only thing I hear are blood-curdling screams. He dropped the phone on the floor, but I could still hear it next to him. He's screaming, "No, God, please." Then silence. "Hello? What's happening? Get out of there." I started crying. I'm sorry. So sorry, man. Suddenly I hear something on the other end. David, I said, filled with hope. But this was not David. It was something else. It sounded like thousands of children's whispering incoherent things at the same time. A minute later, the call ends. Soon after this, I went back to my front door, looked out the peephole again. I don't see a thing. I could hear them horrifying whispers outside. I immediately barricaded the front door, with tears pouring down my face. I've been hiding in the bathroom ever since. His wife has been calling non-stop, but I'm too ashamed to answer. She recently sent a text saying that she'd been to mine and nobody opened. I'm relieved that my brother locked the door from inside. I can't imagine what would have happened if whatever killed my brother entered into our world. Sooner or later, someone will come and break that door down. I don't know what to do. Help me.
Some strange sounds have been coming from my neighbour's house. It started a few weeks ago when I first moved in. The neighbourhood seemed decent enough to where I wouldn't be bothered by anyone. In fact, it felt more safe than my last neighbourhood because my neighbour just so happened to be a cop. I saw him the first day I started unpacking. He was around 6'2", with a clean shaved head and large forearms. He smiled at me as he entered his cop car. I waved and continued unpacking. Nothing seemed unusual about him, at least, not at the time. However, over the next few weeks, something felt off about him. For one thing, he constantly had women over to his house. They were always a little on the thicker side, but not thick enough to be considered obese. I'd watch from my window, hoping to get a glimpse of what they were doing, but his blinds were always closed. One night in particular, around 3 AM, I heard some sort of grunting or moaning sound coming from my neighbour's house, followed by an intense scream. I figured that he was into some kinky stuff. I tried to tune out the noises, but they continued for another 10 minutes until nothing. Complete silence. At the time, I hadn't thought much about it until night after night, he brought home another woman. Some nights I didn't hear a thing, but other nights, the strange noises continued. The following week I heard a knock at my door. When I looked in the peephole, there was my neighbour. He was holding a small box of pastries. I saw him foot tapping against the cement, patiently waiting for me to open the door. He knocks again. I know there's no way out of it. I open the door and smile. "Oh, hey there." I sound a little bit over-enthusiastic. Hello," he says, rubbing his shaved head. "I'm Merle. I didn't get the chance to properly introduce myself. I've just been extremely busy." "Oh, it's okay. Me too," I say. "Well, I bought you these pastries. I hope you like chocolate," he said, handing me the box. "Who doesn't?" I laugh nervously. "I own a baking shop on the side. I give lessons as well. You should stop by tonight and get a free lesson on me." He smiles. I don't know. I wouldn't want to intrude," I wearily say. He could tell my voice was shaking. "Nonsense. It's a neighbourly thing to do. See you at 7. He started to walk back to his house. I spent the day pacing around my house, not knowing what to do. If I didn't go, he'd keep pressuring me and start to get suspicious. However, if I did go, I could possibly find out what on earth was going on and that I was hearing every night. As I swelled deeper into my thoughts, I looked over at the clock, which read 6:54. It was now or never. I went into the kitchen and grabbed one of the knives and placed it in my purse. I took a deep breath and walked over to Meryl's house and rang the doorbell. He answered the door wearing a brown stained apron. "You're a few minutes early," he said, beckoning me in. His house covered in Victorian portraits, clay figurines, cheap china, and old Victorian furniture. It didn't really fit the personality of a 30-something cop. "I can teach you to make anything you like," he says, coming from the kitchen. "Yeah, sure. Creme brulee would be great," I say, scanning the entire living room. "Hey, can I use your bathroom?" I ask. "Down the hall on the right," he yells. I walk down the hall to see more painted pictures. The walls are painted pastel pink. I open the door to the bathroom and lock the door. I slowly open the drawers to see nothing out of the ordinary, just a toothbrush, toothpaste and a shaver. I sigh in relief. Next to the toilet, I see a few magazines scattered across the sink. They're dated back to the early 2000s. I pretend to wash my hands and follow him into the kitchen. "Sorry, one too many burritos," I say. He laughs and empties out the ingredients to make the creme brulee. "Ah, I forgot the heavy cream," he says. "Would you be a doll and run to the basement and grab some? I have an extra fridge down there too." Sure," I say hesitantly. I reach for the purse in the living room and head down the basement towards the direction he pointed. It's dark down there, and their steep stairs creak as I trailed down. I smelled some sort of robust aroma coming from down the basement that almost made me gag. As I feel the bottom step below me, I heard a sound from above. "Mo?" I asked. I switch on the light to see the door had been shut. I don't even bother going upstairs to unlock it after I saw the contents of the basement. There were 6 freezers inside of his crammed basement. As I circled the basement, my head hit something above me. I looked above to see large chains above my head with shackles. That's when I heard it, that strange moaning sound yet again, coming from a large freezer. I slowly move the freezer and unlock the door. Tears stream from my face and I'm frozen, immobilized from even moving an inch. Several women are hanging from meat hooks, frostbitten and dying. Their mouths are sewn shut. One woman was tied up in the corner. From what I could see, all the other women were dead. I reach for my purse and attempt to cut her mouth open without cutting her lips. I watched as her skin begins to crack with each slit I make. Finally, I cut off the last string as she let out another deep moan. "Help me," she said between shivers. I cut open the string and hoist her out the freezer. I held on to her as she continued to shiver. When I saw her in better light, I recognized her as the thick girl I had seen walk into his house a week earlier. "What on earth is he going to do to us?" I asked. "He's a sick man," she said between sobs. "He said he could teach me how to bake, but he's trapped me in his basement," she said, falling to the ground. I hold on to her, attempting to warm her up. "We don't have much time," she says. "I saw he did to those other women." "What? What did he do?" "He eats them. He starts with their breast, then moves towards their heart. He saves their privates for last," she says, trying to stand up. "How much time do we have?" "Not long. He knows that we're trapped in here, but eventually he'll come down and force feed you to one of his other victims, before putting you into a freezer until you slowly die." She starts to stand up. "We need to find some way to attack him from behind." I start to search the basement for some way out, but there's nothing. As I search through the piles of garbage, I find a black bag which seems to be wrapped in something rather large. I open up the bag to find a putrid smell. Inside, I find the skeleton of a small and frail body. It's wearing a red blazer, a pastel-coloured shirt, and older woman's slacks. "I think I found the woman who actually lived here," I whispered. As we continued to search, I found a small opening in the foundation. Being a 90-pound woman, I figured that I could squeeze through the hole if I made it a little bigger. I grabbed my knife and continued to jab the foundation until it crumbled. I probably had some poor woman to thank for thinking of an escape route. "Let's get the hell out of here," I say to the woman, but I look over and she's passed out on the floor. I run over to see that she's unconscious. I feel for her pulse and her heart slowly beating. I try to shake the woman to wake her, but she doesn't respond. "Ah!" I say. I try for a few more minutes, but she's still lying unconscious. I decide to escape and come back for her. I run out my house and unlock the door. I quickly shut the door, all of my windows, and lock myself in my room with my knife. I didn't know what to do anymore. Who would believe that my cop is a cannibal? Moments later, I heard the doorbell ring. I knew it was him. I reached for my cell and dialed 911. I try and calmly tell them what's going on, but my words are slightly mumbled. "Help is on the way, Mum," the dispatcher says. I don't want to be next. I don't know what to do. I know he's watching me. I can see him staring at me from my window. He's smiling, still wearing his brown-stained robe. Except now, there's fresh blotches of red on it. He goes back into his house for 5 minutes and returns in his uniform. I watch as the police pull up to his home. He greets the other officer. They talk for a moment as the cop gets back into his car. "No, no, no!" I yelled. "Where are you going?" My phone begins to ring. It's a private number. "Hello," I managed to say. "Usually I prefer to eat women who are a little on the thicker side." He pauses. "But I'm starting to get a little thick myself. I think it's time for me to go on a diet." It is true that the job can be dangerous, but as far as scary stories go, Missing 411 is about as real as it gets. Outside that, I would take the Rangers for a grain of salt. But you want to hear some stories? I got some pretty freaky stuff for you. I experienced and heard about some pretty scary and hard to explain things while I was in the US Coast Guard. As you can tell by my username, I have quite a sense of humour, but this is no joke. There's stuff that happens in the ocean that will give you the chills. There's lots of different job opportunities in the Coast Guard. Some of the young bucks join right out of high school. Most of the time we're nice to them. If they were particularly unsavoury, then they might be subject to a bit of hazing. One day, an AMT complained about having to clean the kitchen, so we painted his toenails while he was sleeping. It was all in good fun. Through my 8-year career, I try to get along with everyone. When you're well liked and trusted, you might hear some things. One particular creepy story I heard was from my captain I served under in 2008. He told me they were off the coast of Alaska, doing a 6-week patrol in a WMEC 270-foot cutter when it happened. There was this new kid who just joined up, working on the ship. He did his job decently enough, but he talked so little, he was nearly mute. Nobody really thought much of it. There are quite a few hard-boiled stone-faced dudes in this field, so it wasn't viewed as anything that wasn't normal. The captain just felt really weird about this kid for some reason. Ben, I think his name was. So they were nearing the end of their patrol. Everyone was relieved to get off the boat and get some real sleep. The captain was on watch when he looked over on the pool, left for land bubbers like you, and saw what he thought were hands grabbing the side. He said it was dark out and he didn't want to raise the alarm for a man overboard until he could confirm there was actually something hanging off the side. He didn't have to wait long. He said he saw a black shape of a person crawl onto the ship. Obviously, I don't need to tell you how utterly impossible it is for someone to just climb onto a 270-foot ship in the ocean. So he raises the alarm, and him and 5 guys go looking for this person. He said at this point everyone thought he was having a laugh. So they find nothing, and everyone goes back to what they were doing. The captain was thoroughly creeped out already, but this was about to get even weirder. When they disembarked, Ben was gone. All his stuff was still by his bunk. Nothing out of place. No one saw him leave or fall overboard. The ship was searched and there was a whole investigation, but no one ever found out for certain what happened. The captain then leaned in really close to me. But I know. Whoever, whatever, climbed into that ship that night took Ben. That story gave me a bad vibe, and I'll remember it for a long time, just because of how seriously strange the whole thing was. maybe not the creepiest thing to ever happen to me, but definitely made me deactivate my account and look behind my shoulder. I was 19 years old at the time, single, attending college at a university in my hometown. I still lived at home. I had friends, but I was romantically lonely, so I decided to download OkCupid and give it a whirl. I had a friend who used it, and the app was a moderate success with him. I considered myself streetwise, and I knew I could always deactivate if anything creepy happened. I chose a username that couldn't directly lead to finding me on social media, and I didn't link up a Tinder account. I didn't list anything overly personal in my profile, just interests like music and movies. The usual, I like hiking, let's get to know each other, blah blah blah. Things were mostly fine. I got pervy messages, nothing too extreme. I conversed pleasantly with some men and went on some dates. I felt safe. Then, one day, I logged into my Facebook and had a chat request. He told me his name was Ryan, and he was college-aged, attending school at my university, looking for friends. Now keep in mind, I had also been in a group on Facebook about finding friends on campus, because I often felt alienated there. I thought this was a man from the group, so my messages were very friendly and trying to get to know you type chats. The conversation was fine at first, but I thought it was odd that he didn't have a profile picture. He kept begging me for more pictures of myself, but demurring when I asked for a picture of him. He would bemoan how ugly he was, and how pretty girls never liked hideous guys. I tried to be nice, but it started bothering me. Then, the messages started getting bizarre. He kept asking me where I was going to be in class, or to go to the class the next day. I didn't respond. They kept getting more and more frequent and hysterical. I'm talking 20 or 30 a day, begging me to respond. Then finally, in terrible pronunciation, I see you every day in the Mac lab, in the library. You are so cute, please talk to me. My blood ran cold. He sent an accompanying picture of himself. I recognised him as a man who had harassed me on OkCupid, and who I had eventually blocked. He was probably at least 20 years older than me, balding, with extremely yellow teeth. I'm not trying to judge someone on appearance, but something in his eyes were wild and just didn't sit right. I'm not sure if I'm describing this right, but his eyes were just like black pits. He really creeped me out. Somehow he had found my personal Facebook from OkCupid, and I'm not even sure how. But he also knew I had studied ex-library in By-Kaleb, and made it clear that he had been watching me for some time as well. There was no way he would have done that unless he'd been actively, physically stalking me. I've never seen him on campus, and never saw him again. I blocked him instantly from Facebook, and always checked behind my back when I walked at night on campus. For a while I was worried he was still stalking me at the library, so I changed the locations that I studied at. It was all very nerve-wracking. I live in a ranch-style home in the middle of Missouri on a 1 acre of nothing but woods. We bought the house almost 2 years ago. The house was vacant for over 8 months before we purchased it, and the retailers had problems with squatters about 3 months into the house being for sale, but said nothing had happened since. My elderly grandmother lives with me, as I'm her caregiver. It's just the two of us and our dogs. We moved into the house in early October 2016. The first incident occurred in March of 2017. We started seeing a bunch of plastic bags and trash around the back of our house, further out than either of us go. Didn't think much of it, but did make a mental note that raccoons or something could be getting into our trash. I put some bungee cords on the cans to hold the lids down and wrote it off as that. One night I was coming home much later than normal, around 1:30 AM. All of the land is fenced in, but there is this one back gate. Near the back gate I saw a bunch of trees rustling. There is a lot of wildlife in that area, so I assumed that's what it was. But I got that horrible feeling in the pit of my stomach, and decided to go check it out. The ground was dry enough that I was able to drive through the yard in my car with the doors locked. I shone my headlights on the trees, and a man came running out of them. If that wasn't terrifying enough, He ran straight for the gate as if he knew exactly where it was, opened it and left. I was absolutely terrified, so I called my dad, who lives in the area. He explained to me how the large population of homeless people is in the area, and how he'd be over the next day to put a lock on our gate. About 2 weeks after the first incident, I was letting my dogs outside. The one had already went outside, and the other was playing hard to get as usual. I began calling her name. It wasn't even dark outside. After about 3 calls, another voice, distinctly male, started calling out her name. She began barking aggressively and running for the house. I was freaked out, but again let my family talk me out, making a call to the authorities. About a month passes. My grandmother has a habit of forgetting to close the garage door behind her. Around 11 PM, our neighbour from across the street knocks at our door. He says he was outside smoking and he saw 2 men standing in our garage talking. He says as soon as he started walking over, they ran off. What scares me the most about this event is they stole nothing, and there was plenty to steal. We have a brand new refrigerator, leaf blower, power tools, and my grandmother leaves the keys in the car. They were just talking. This time I called the police, and they told me in the nicest way possible they couldn't do anything. If there was another incident, to call them and not to scare the men away. The final incident of 2017 happened probably 3 months after the prior one. We have a sun porch attached to the outside of the house. The door connects to the kitchen, and the outside door to the deck. I don't know if I explained that right, and if anyone wants me to post pictures I can. Basically, we left for several hours to go grocery shopping. We came home, and all our deck furniture was stacked on top of each other, and the screen ripped off the sun porch door. I called the non-emergency hotline for my area, and again said we've no idea who these people are, nothing could be done. About 2 weeks ago now, we had our white vinyl fence power washed. Because the fence is quite old, a post came off the fence, and the company that power washed the fence didn't know how to fix it, and we didn't blame them, so they had no reason to. We left the post in the front yard, but up against the fence. We came home a couple of days later, and the post was now back up, with a smiley face sticky note attached to it. This very easily could have been done by a kind neighbour, but I was immediately spooked. Cut to Saturday of last week. My grandmother is able to drive again, but doesn't have her own car. I'm busy working around the house, so she decides to take herself to the doctor. My grandmother leaves the house through our door connected to the garage, and I lock it behind her. It dawns on me to check to make sure she's closed it. About 20 minutes after she leaves, someone starts heavily banging on the door. When I say banging, I mean it sounds like the SWAT team. Someone was putting all their force into banging on that door. My dogs are going nuts, and I don't know what to think. I start to think maybe my grandma left something and is trying to get my attention, but the little voice in the back of my head stops me and tells me there's no way that little old lady is banging on the door like that. Suddenly it stops, and I hear a deep, again distinctly male, laugh. I grab a baseball bat out of my bedroom and lock myself in the bathroom with the dogs. I realise I've left my phone outside the bathroom, but I was too afraid to go out the bathroom to get it. I took the lid off the tank of the toilet, so I had 2 weapons. Nothing happened, and I hid in the bathroom until my grandma was home again. So that's the story. I know there wasn't some big confrontational climax, but I fear the story may not be over yet. I don't know if any of these events are connected at all, but I've got in my head that they are, and I'm driving myself nuts to the point where I'm afraid to be alone in my own house. The only reason I've even included the fence is because there hasn't been a single sketchy thing happen at all in 2018. And then someone fixes the fence, and less than a week later, another scary encounter. I honestly don't know what to think. I'll update if anything else happens. My cousin is my best friend. We have been since childhood, and never grew apart as adults. Anytime we have get-togethers or free time, or pretty much anything, we call each other up and hang out together. For some reason though, I couldn't make it to go out this one particular night, and I'm actually happy I couldn't go. He went with his 2 buddies instead. If he's telling the truth about what happened, I don't know if I could ever sleep alone again. I'll tell you guys what he told me to the best of my memory. Names are changed for privacy. 2 days ago, I was sitting at home when I got a call from Eric, my cousin. He seemed to be paranoid about something, or worried, and what he told me sent shivers down my spine. Hey man, I gotta tell you some weird stuff that happened when me, James and Garrett went out to this supposedly haunted abandoned building in Grand Rapids. I swear to God, I've been hearing shit at night, and I feel like someone's been following me that isn't actually there. I swear to God dude, I'm not kidding. I think something is following me and it's gonna kill me. I could hear his voice start to shake at the end of his sentences. We all got the great idea of bringing a Ouija board out with us to see if we could get the damn thing to actually work. Of course we were drinking, but that's it dude. No weed, shrooms or anything. We found a broken window pretty quick, so we all snuck in through it and immediately were hit with a nasty smell. It was so bad, but we weren't going to turn back just because the place stunk a little bit. So we explored a little bit, and it was pretty cool at first seeing all the graffiti and whatnot, but as we got further into the place, it got disturbing. There was writing on the walls telling you to turn back and that he lives here. We thought it was funny at first, but got creeped out pretty quick. Of course Garrett decided this was the best place to break out the Ouija board, and we just agreed to get it over with and get the hell out of that place. Something just felt off. After we got the board set up and weren't laughing and joking around anymore, I realised how quiet it was. You could hear a pin drop. We all worked out the courage and set our fingers on the centrepiece you used to communicate and started asking questions. Garrett asked the first question. "Is anyone here?" We could hear he was nervous. The piece didn't move at all when Garrett asked, so I tried a few. I asked if anyone wanted to communicate and if they were nice spirits. You know, the usual questions you see in the movies that people ask once they're using the boards. We all started to get disappointed when finally something answered. I wish to God it hadn't, and I wish James didn't ask that stupid question. "Are you a pussy? Is that why you won't talk with us?" he asked as we all laughed. We all stopped laughing pretty quick when we heard the thing slide on the board, dragging our fingers with it. "No." We all spent the next minute or two trying to figure out who moved it, when the next time it moved, we knew it was none of us. No way man, not the way our fingers move with it. You would have had to been there to know what I mean, but it dragged our fingers pretty fast as it spelled out a sentence. "Stay with you." We looked around nervously, trying to find out what the hell it meant. Then all of a sudden, I started feeling sick. I knew what it meant. It was going to latch itself onto us and follow us home. "You guys, we need to end this and get the hell out of here. I have a bad feeling about this," I told the guys. When I looked up at them, I swear to God my heart pounded so hard, I thought it was going to stop altogether. James and Garrett were both looking directly at me with these huge, cartoonish smiles. His voice started cracking and he began to sob lightly. Both their eyes were so open, man. I don't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. I just sat there stunned. There was something so wrong about both their faces. They looked like different people. It was so terrifying. So I tried talking to them, just praying that they were playing a joke, but I knew. It was getting harder to understand him as he began sobbing harder. "James, what the hell are you guys doing?" I could barely get the words out, I was so scared. Then James shook his head very slowly, and drool started dripping from his huge damn smile. So I looked over at Garrett, and he was too smiling, widely with those huge eyes. He was panting though, rapid, quick breaths. I have never been so afraid in my life. They were possessed with something, and I don't know, but this wasn't the same two people I came in with. I had to act fast, so I jumped up as quick as I could and just ran back the way I came. It was the most terrifying second of my life, as I ran, hoping to hear them laugh and call me back. They didn't. Instead I heard them get up and start coming after me. They were laughing, but not in a normal way. It was like a hiccup and giggle, like they were having fun and hunting me. I had a little lead on them, so I looked back and I couldn't believe it, dude. They were running so strange. Their arms were glued to their side, and looked like they broke their necks with the weird angle they were at. That's when I noticed how quick they were gaining on me. I tried to run faster, but I couldn't, so I had to look somewhere to hide or something. I came around a corner and noticed a small room, so I dove in as quiet as I could and held my breath. I could hear their footsteps stomping as they got closer, and thank God they ran past the little room I was in. Hearing those weird short breaths was terrifying as they passed the door. I heard them go down some steps, so as quiet as I could, I shut and locked the door. I don't know how, but they heard me close that damn door. They stopped dead in their tracks and started racing back up the steps. How the fuck did they hear that? I remember whispering to myself. I searched around frantically and noticed a small window at the end of the room. I go up to it, and then right behind me was a huge bang as they crashed into the door. "Knock it off!" I screamed at them. It got rather quiet after that, and I listened and waited for something to happen. "Dude, where are we?" I heard James's normal voice ask. I've never felt more relieved in my life to hear an actual voice. James, is that you?" I'm embarrassed to say that I started crying from pure joy. "Yeah, what the hell's going on?" he asked, sounding pretty confused. "Where's Garrett?" I asked, hoping he was alright too. "I don't know. I don't see him," he said, sounding a little frightened. I started jogging to the door, and just as I grabbed the door to open it, I looked down, and that's when I noticed the shadows. There were definitely 2 shadows on either side of that door. Why the hell would he tell me he didn't see Garrett if you could clearly see his shadow at the door? My heart started to race again as I realised whatever that thing was, it was trying to trick me. "Come on man, open up, it's scary out here," James pleaded. I backed up to the window and found a leg from an old chair and swung it as hard as I could, the window shattering on impact. As soon as it broke, the pounding at the door started back up, and I could hear those weird giggles again. I jumped out the window and ran as fast as I could, taking one look back. James and Garrett are both standing at a broken window, with those same creepy smiles watching me run away. I didn't slow down for a second, in fear they would start chasing me again. I got home and locked all of my doors, and been paranoid as hell, feeling like someone is always watching me. I didn't know what to do, so I called you, man. The problem is now that they both started texting me about half an hour ago. This is where his story ended, and he asked me to come over to his house. I told him I'd be over in an hour or so, but I thought I would share this with you guys before I head out. I'm going to try and convince him to go check on his buddies with me to see if they're alright. Wish me luck.